The return of the Premier League, and this is what it's all about. They all want to win this. And this is the man in charge of the Premier League, Richard Masters. Richard, good to speak to you. 5 years, can you believe it, into your role as Premier League Chief Executive. How would you assess the state of play? How would you assess the health of English football right now?
It's actually 5.5, and I count the half. I think the English football is in brilliant shape. How would I judge that? The Premier League's in growth. We're coming to the end of our commercial cycle, so we're working really hard to be a sort of £4 billion a year organisation from the start of 25-26, the end of next season. We want to share our success with everybody as we currently do, and that helps us to invest in grassroots. Obviously, we have our relationship with the EFL and other parts of football. And I look back at the Euros and I see a fantastic England team, well managed, and lots of young, exciting, technically gifted, well-rounded footballers playing for the England team. That feels to me like we're heading in the right direction.
You mentioned you want to help grassroots, those maybe further down the pyramid, if you like. The EFL distribution, Richard, is it ever going to happen? I mean, what is the biggest stumbling point in this, in terms of the Premier League sharing a lot of its wealth with those down there?
Well, I think we should start by just reminding everybody we have a long-term deal in place, which was agreed in 2018. It's going to deliver about £130 million worth of solidarity revenue. That doesn't include the parachute payments that are made to recently relegated EFL clubs. The EFL has just started its new TV deal with Sky. They're in growth as well. And there's more good news on the horizon commercially. So both the Premier League and the EFL are in commercial growth. So that's good news. When we paused the negotiations back at the late part of last year, we said we would concentrate on a new financial system. And that's what we've done. So as you know, we're putting in place, or we're shadowing rather, testing new financial regulations during season 24-25 with a view to implementing them in 25-26, subject to a club vote. So that's moving away from PSR, moving to something called squad cost ratio, which is aligned with UEFA financial rules. So lots of things going on. I think it'd be wrong for me today to start talking about sort of timeframes and quantums, but obviously we also have an independent regulator. Prospectively, the bill's got to be reintroduced. But we're very much in favour of industry-led solutions to all the problems. We believe that we can sort everything out between us. We don't need regulatory intervention to resolve that issue.
I mean, it's like everything else in life, isn't it, Richard? It's always hoped that the wealthiest would want to help those not so lucky. And that's basically what we're talking about.
Well, that does happen, Jim. I mean, it's interesting stats, just talking about the Premier League's contribution to grassroots. I read that the government and lottery funding give £385 million to the entire Olympic and Paralympic federations to prepare them for the Olympics between Tokyo and Paris. And that's the same amount of money the Premier League will give to the grassroots and wider football. That's not including EFL solidarity during this current 3-year cycle. So we do share our success and we deliver on our promises.
Let's look at things practically and from a today point of view. FFP, points deductions, 115 charges levied at Manchester City, the champions. With all that in mind, Richard, are you still overseeing the greatest league in the world?
Well, we've never said it's the greatest league in the world. We're very happy when other people call it that. And we're happy to say it's the most watched and the most popular because the data seems to suggest as it is. I've got a fantastic job. I do preside over a brilliant football competition. We do have some issues and we need to resolve them. And I know that sort of creates uncertainty and some frustration. And we have some we don't want to normalise asterisks on the league table or long-running regulatory disputes with clubs. We don't. We want the football to be front and centre at all times. So I get the point of the question, and I agree with you. It's much better if we're talking only about the football and not the business of football off the pitch quite so often.
But of course, a lot of football fans, not only Manchester City fans, but fans of other clubs, will be talking about those 115 charges, Richard. Whether you like it or not, whether I like it or not, it's a topic of conversation, and it's a constant one. how swiftly should we expect this all to be dealt with? I know you'll say to me, I'm not going to put a timeline on it, but put a timeline on it.
No, I can't do that.
Why? That's the only thing the fans want to know.
Let me help explain. So the way that our regulatory system works is that we announce charges, and then at the end of the process, that we publish a decision, or the independent panel publishes a decision. So it's important to understand it's not the Premier League or the Premier League board which is hearing disciplinary cases. It's an independent panel, independently selected. And it's their job to run the timeline and the substance of the case. And I can't put a timeline on it because all of that is confidential. And the panel are very clear. They do not want the Premier League or any party talking about this case. And so we're not going to do that. And I'm sorry I can't answer your question more accurately. A date has been set. But I do agree that the situation needs resolving, and I'm sure it will be.
The problem is, Richard, the integrity of the top tier of the game is at stake here, isn't it?
Well, there is no happy alternative to enforcing the rules. Every sporting competition has a rule book, and the regulator in the middle of it, in this case the Premier League, has to enforce those rules. If it wants to look at the league table at the end of any season and say, that is a fair and square result for the 380 matches we've just seen. And so that means us enforcing our rules, and we will continue to do so if necessary. It's much better if we have a regulatory framework that all clubs comply with. But when that isn't the case, whether it be failing floodlights or financial regulations, the Premier League will enforce the rules.
Richard, if City are found guilty of one, of a few, of all of the charges that they face, what would constitute the strongest course of action?
Well, you're asking me to speculate about the outcome of a case that's ongoing, so I can't do that. So I can't answer your question.
So it's open-ended. We'll just have to wait and wait and wait.
Yes.
Everton and the ownership of the football club, 2 ownership collapses, 777 and Dan Friedkin. Is this a Premier League problem or is it an Everton problem?
Well, perhaps contrary to their perceptions, we have a strong working relationship with the club. We're in constant contact with them. We understand their financial position. The current owner, Fahad Mashiri, wants to sell the club. He's in active discussions with people. And obviously, from the Premier League's perspective, it's not up to us to decide who is the next owner of. That is something for Fahad Mashiri to decide. It's our job is to operate the rules and to operate the ownership test. So when that decision is made, that's when we become involved in it. Obviously, we would like all of our clubs to be on a sound financial footing, to have clear ownership, to understand where they're heading. And I think it's in the best interest of everybody that Fahad Mashiri completes that sale process as soon as possible. And
as you say, you're in constant discussion with Farhad. Do you speak to him on a semi-regular basis?
No, it's with the club, so with the club executives. So with the team that run the club on a day-to-day basis. Our team, our finance team, talk to them all the time and have a good working relationship with them. So we're fully aware of what's going on at the club.
Were you somewhat saddened about the amount of time that the 777 saga was allowed to run on? Because you know where I'm going with it, Richard. Fans' expectation is huge. And I think they thought, these are the guys, 777 are the guys. And the supporters bought into it, only to be let down at the last moment. That situation was allowed to rumble on and on and on.
Yes, but as I said, it's not our role to decide when sales take place or to whom. Our job is to operate the ownership test. And we cannot, at our peril, intervene in a live sales process unless we have good reason to do so. So we believe at all times we're acting appropriately in the right way. I think it's now publicly known that we had lots of interactions with the club in that sales process and put some conditions in relation to the sale. Obviously that sale is not completed. So that's behind us now.
We know there are interested parties in Everton. Why wouldn't there be, Richard? Can you give us any kind of signal that this is going to be resolved soon? Do you get the impression that the Everton situation could come to a conclusion soon that will suit all parties?
I can't. It's not really for me to speak on behalf of the club in this matter. you have to rely on Everton to do that. As I said, without repeating myself, Jim, our role is not to sort of provide a running commentary on the sale of the club. That really is for the club to decide what it wants to say to its fans at the appropriate time.
Certain Premier League matches, the likelihood or otherwise, Richard, of them being played abroad. This is something that Simon and I constantly talk about on our show on talkSPORT. You'll no doubt have heard us. How big is the appetite for that to happen? Maybe amongst Premier League owners, maybe amongst people who run the game, top executives.
Well, a number of things have happened. So it's not clear what, if anything, has changed at FIFA level, and so until that's resolved, it's almost a sort of moot conversation. What I can say is there aren't any plans to play matches abroad. The Premier League, it's never been discussed at a shareholders meeting. We don't canvass opinion on it. I know that certain individuals have views in favour of it, and they're entitled to those views. But at the moment, there are no plans whatsoever to play matches abroad.
Does the Premier League really need it to play a game stateside?
Well, we have got incredible support domestically. Last year, the Premier League was just about 99% sold out, and so that's fantastic support from the match-going public, and that is incredibly important. But we've also got, millions and millions of supporters around the world, and in the US in particular, where the Premier League has grown immensely in the last 10 years for a number of factors, including our partnership with NBC. I've done a superb job of showcasing our brilliant competition, and probably taking Premier League support out of niche into something approaching mainstream. I've done a fantastic job of promoting it. So we are in growth around the world. So when I talk about our revenue growth, it's all reinvested into the competition. Clubs reinvest that revenue back on the pitch to put the best players on the pitch from around the world, along with homegrown talent, to put the best managerial team they can in the dugout. That all comes from revenue that's generated. And I think our team has done a great job of maximising that opportunity, and a lot of that comes from international fans. But we have to balance everything. We have to keep the home fires burning, and also provide a competition that people want to watch on television screens around the world, and we've been successful in doing that.
A final one from me, and it doesn't involve Manchester City or 115 charges, but it does involve Chelsea. Where are the Premier League up to with Chelsea's admitted Abramovich breaches?
Well, again, probably an unsatisfactory answer for you, but obviously what we're talking about is something historic, it's complicated, where we have the club talking to us about things that happened under previous ownership. All I can say is that investigation, those discussions are reaching a conclusion. But until they have reached a conclusion, I can't really say what's going to happen next.
It's good to come here today and speak to you, to get the opportunity. You're always welcome to come in and join Mr. Jordan and myself in the news building.
Well, you've suggested that in the past, so maybe we can make it happen.